Before we get into this week's Snap or Pass, I just wanted to say happy holidays to everyone who dropped by the channel and watched the content throughout this last year. It's been an awesome time doing these Snap or Pass, and we've been doing it since the summer, so I just wanted to say thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who has supported the channel. Now, we gotta talk about the next card, the last card of 2023 for Marvel Snap, and that is going to be Selene. A 1/1 on reveal, afflict the lowest power card in each player's hand with -3 power. Not exactly that nice giving Christmas gift that you were hoping to receive in Marvel Snap. Quite the opposite, in fact. I would say she's dishing out some coal by giving out -3 power. Now, you can make this work in your own deck, right? We're looking at junk decks. Now, if you're a little bit annoyed with junk decks, I am going to let you know that at least DATAMINEs for like the foreseeable future, it seems like there's not going to be a lot more cards added to that archetype. Okay, so it's going to chill for a little bit. We've gotten a lot of support. I think this is the last one for a hot second. Now, of course, the rest of the spotlight caches are pretty fire this week. We got Black Knight, who's a Series 5 card and an amazing variant for him as well. And then Iron Lad Series 5 card. Now, we do know that series drops are coming back, right? They're coming back. I believe it's like January. There's going to be like a dozen cards dropping in series, but Iron Lad, Black Knight, they are not dropping. They're staying at Series 5, which makes it a very high value spotlight cache week, especially with Iron Lad being one of the better cards in the game. So yeah, pretty appetizing. I like this a lot for the spotlight caches. But of course, we got to talk about the new card, Selene. So we're going to break down some mechanics, counters, and deck lists that I brewed up for you here today, and some DATAMINE cards that may or may not help her out in the future. So without further ado, let's find out if Selene is a snap or a pass. All right, now for the mechanics for Selene, I don't think there's a whole lot to cover here. It's pretty straightforward, and there's a lot of similar cards that exist in Marvel Snap, but there's a few key things that I want to get out of the way here, and one of them being a tie in the hand. So if your opponent has two cards that both have 1 power, well, she's going to randomly choose one of those cards to give -3, okay, or whatever that lowest power tie is. It's not going to afflict both of them if there's a tie. It's just going to choose one. Also, multiple triggers of her on reveal can stack on the same card. So if you use it with Wong, right, it's going to trigger twice in that turn, but there's a very good chance, in fact, I would say it's pretty much guaranteed, that you're going to hit the same card with that -3 debuff, which maybe that's okay, but I think in most case scenarios, you'd rather spread it out. Another funny one is that Colossus, he'll have his power reduced in the hand because we know ongoing effects don't actually activate until that card is on the board, so he will look like a 2/0 in hand, which actually could get discounted by Ravonna, but regardless, he'll have 0 in hand, and then you could play him and he'll get that power back. Don't worry about it, okay? That same goes for Luke Cage. Luke Cage is going to do the same thing, okay? Another one is that afflicted cards are not revealed to each player. So the only reason I bring this up is because traditionally, that is true, right? We don't actually see the card that got hit by that RNG effect. But then Spider-Ham came out and did show the opponents, what card was hit. And it was like, oh, okay, that's actually a very important piece of information to know about that card. Knowing what's in your opponent's hand and knowing what was disrupted so that later turns you can plan accordingly. Not going to happen here. There's going to be a random card in their hand. There's going to be -3 applied. You won't know until that card actually hits the board, which it may never actually do. So I'm actually going to jump over to the cons. One of the cons with Selene is that, your opponent might be looking at that card in their hand and thinking, yeah, you know what? I wasn't going to play that anyways. Didn't really care to play that card. You just hit it with -3. And now you're left with a -1 power card on your side of the board. Now, I know I'm going to get this right out of the way. There are cards that make use of having a -1 power card on your side of the board. And of course, in the right deck list, then it's okay. But, if you're just plugging and playing this, maybe in a control list, one, you got to watch out the fact that this is reciprocal. It's going to hit your hand as well. So you got to kind of just make sure that the lowest power card in your hand is willing to take a -3 hit. And then also you got to look at the board and think, shoot, man, I'm taking up a spot on my side of the board. I'm putting -1 power. Might not be what I actually want to do, especially if they don't end up playing that card. I was thinking of things like Dr. Octopus to pull the card out of the hand or something like that. But I think in most case scenarios, your opponent probably will want to play that card. And if they don't, then that's disruptive enough. You basically just took a very good card in their hand out of the game, which is where Selene is going to be one of those cards that's kind of hard to evaluate if she actually impacted the game in a very positive manner. Sometimes it's going to be obvious. They play that card and it's like, bam, I got you. But other times it's kind of like Iceman. I mean, if they never play it, you don't really know what you hit, and you don't know if you actually change their mind on their play patterns for the remainder of the game. Another thing is that she's narrow application, kind of like I was hinting at, because we are hitting our own hand with this -3 debuff, we're probably looking to hit a goblin. I think in most case scenarios, goblins are the best targets because then they're going to be sent over with that -3 debuff. Now you're looking at your green goblin is -6, your hobgoblin's -11. Such an incredible swing. And you cherry on top is you play a Nihilist, and he's going to send over Selene, who's a -1. So in junk decks, fantastic. I think she is now the junk queen. We got a Nihilist, the junk king in November, and now the junk queen has arrived. But there's some other applications I could see her working in particular some control lists. We're going to get to that in a second in the deck list that I brewed up, but I just wanted to kind of let you guys know that this is an expensive card. This is Series 5, 6,000 tokens, and very narrow. I think when the dust settles, she'll be a junk card through and through. But some of the pros, and these are really good pros in my opinion, like I said, top tier 1-cost card for the junk decks. Now you got Hood and you got Selene, and those are like the best cards that you could put in there. And I would actually toss in Nebula as well as 3 very good 1-cost cards for the junk archetype. And then you got 7+ power swing in the right conditions. Now, okay, I want to explain this a little bit. The conditions being that you play a card like Green Goblin and send over that -3 power, or something that you can then send over to your opponent's side of the board, and your opponent plays that -3 power card, so that -3 is actually afflicting them. And on top of that, you swing over Selene with Viper or a Nihilist. As a result, this 1-cost card netted us 7 power and a lot of disruption, a lot of, clogging up their side of the board. Of course, that's the bonus feature to that. But really, when we look at a net power savings, you're kind of looking at 7 power. That's not going to happen every time. In fact, I don't think that's going to happen a whole lot. But it's still pretty nasty. It's still pretty good, especially because we can control what the -3 hits in our hand. And in most case scenarios, if we're running goblins, you wait to play Selene until you have goblin in hand, because that's the whole point. That's really the swing that you need. So yeah, there you go. Those are just a couple pros and cons mechanics that I thought up. But let's talk about how to counter this card, because there's some interesting options. All right, now you want to counter Selene because you think junk decks might be popping off this Christmas? Well, look no further than a card like Cosmo, because Cosmo's just going to stop her -3 from happening into your hand and their hand, which they're probably running that goblin or sending something over. So that's going to be a really good stop. Another one is Luke Cage. Luke Cage could be a really sick, counter to Selene, because not only are you going to stop the -3 debuff from whatever card you ended up playing in your hand, maybe even Luke Cage himself, but you also could, swing that green goblin from being a -6 to a -3. Will that impact the game enough to actually matter? Who knows? Luke Cage definitely took a huge nerf when he became very location focused, but still, it's a good counter. Colossus can't have his power reduced. Not too shabby. Are you going to run Colossus because of this? Probably not. But here's some other interesting ones. In Bast, right? So your hand got afflicted. Well, you can play Bast and guarantee that it goes back to 3 power. That could be a 6 power swing if you had a card like Iron Man in your hand that took that debuff. Pretty nasty. Pretty nice. A Nihilist, the mirror matchup, that's going to be crazy. I mean, it was crazy when a Nihilist came out, and it's only going to get crazier when this card comes out, because I'm sure everyone's going to jump to the junk archetype. So yeah, of course, a Nihilist sending over that negative afflicted card. And then Dracula. Dracula, man. So I wanted to talk about this one and Taskmaster and any cards that actually set their power, because we know from Dracula getting buffs in the hand with Nakia or whatever else, doesn't really matter, or he's played at a location that gives him +2 power. I forget what it's called, Stark Tower, I think. Anything like that goes away. All that power goes away, because whenever he discards the card at the end of the game, he's setting his power to whatever the total power of that card is. So he's actually a sick option to run with Selene and against. I mean, against, you're probably just playing a discard deck and hoping that it hits your Dracula. So I don't know if it's a tech option, but playing with Selene is sweet, right? Because we can take that -3 hit, know that it's not going to affect us later on, and we're going to get whatever power from that card that we discard, but we also afflict our opponent's hand with that -3. This also goes for Taskmaster as well, if you wanted to build a deck with that in mind. So I think those are some interesting options I haven't really seen anyone talk about just yet. But there you go. Those are some of the counters. Now, let's talk about some future synergies possibly with the data mines. All right, I was kind of like saying like maybe, sort of, because I don't know if I'm totally sold on these actually working, but they're the only ones in the future that have been data mined that could maybe work. And then we got Black Swan. So Black Swan is going to be the February Season Pass card. She's a 2/3 on reveal until the end of next turn. Your 1-cost cards cost 0. Obviously, why did I put her here? Because Selene is a 1-cost card, and then she's going to cost 0. And there you go. I don't know if that's actually all that great. There's probably way better options to work with Black Swan. But hey, it could work. It could be something. Then you got Random. Now, if you haven't seen this card has been data mined for so long. I think legit since the beginning of Snap. And he's got a bunch of variants too, but he's just never come out. He's a 4/0 and he's going to set his power equal to the power of a random card in your deck. Meaning he can take the hit from Selene and it's not going to matter because he's going to set his power later on. Now, of course, there's a downside of if we haven't drawn Selene or we're running goblins in the Selene deck, then he could gain their power and have -1 or -3. We paid 4 for that. Not very good. But hey, he's random. It's RNG, baby. Let's just go. Let's see what happens and play along with the result. But there you go. Yeah, I don't know. Not too many synergies. I think the Junk Archetype, like I was saying earlier, is going to calm down, which is kind of sad, especially after that last round of nerfs. But it is a pretty toxic deck, let's be honest. All right, let's get to the deck list that I brewed up. So a few of the key synergies I've already kind of covered, but there's a few interesting ones here in that Black Widow is a pretty nice combo. Now, she did just get changed, which is a bummer because I liked, not having to spend too much energy on this combo. Now you're going to get Black Widow herself, which is 3 power. You're going to give your opponent the Widow's Bite, which has -1 power, and, stop them from drawing cards. And then you can play Selene, so a turn 4 play with both cards. And now they have a -4 Widow's Bite. That is really nasty. They got to play that because they need to draw for the later game. So that's just going to be -4 hitting their side of the board. And you will end up with a 3 power Widow and a -1 Selene. If you're running a junk list and you can send it back over, Selene that is, then you're in a good spot. Which actually is going to bring me to our first deck list, the Junk Queen. The Queen of Junk has arrived, and there she is. She's in a junk list. I like this list a lot. It's very reminiscent of the list that got me to Infinite in November and most of December, to be honest. Now, there's a few changes. Viper is now a 3/4. That kind of hurts. I really liked the prospect of using Selene on turn 1 and then Viper on turn 2, and, of course, the combo with Hood as well. But that's just how it is. It's been changed. I still want to run Viper. If we don't draw a Nihilist, we need to send over the rocks or send over Selene herself or that Void from the Sentry. Another card that was changed is Black Widow. So I have Black Widow here for that combination on turn 4 if we can achieve it. I think that's really nasty. And then, of course, just good in junk lists. Even if it's just a -1 Widow's Bite, it's going to work out in our favor. But on top of that, I got Punisher. Let's go. Punisher making the cut in a deck. And I actually think it's a sleeper in junk lists in particular, because we're sending so much stuff over. With our opponent playing cards, us sending stuff over, it's guaranteed they're going to have 2, 3, 4 cards at a location that we play Punisher at. Unless it's a destroy list, we might struggle a little bit. But regardless, it doesn't take much for the Punisher to get to power totals that we need him to be. We only need like 2 cards over there. He's a 3/5 and we're happy. And there's a good chance he's at least going to get to a 3/6, 3/7. So he can kind of solo a lane that we've already clogged. I like it a lot. I've been playing it a lot lately, and it's been working out. So we're putting in the Punisher. And then lastly, we got the 2 goblins in there, because if we hit any of those, we got to play them because the swing is just too strong. And Alioth as a nice finisher. I think people kind of strayed away from Alioth after its last nerf. It is still the best finisher in the game, in my opinion. So very good deck. I'm excited to play that. Next up, if you look at the key synergies, we have Evolved Abomination. Actually pretty good, right? Because you're reflecting a card in your hand that you could play and your opponent's hand. If they play it, then that's 2 energy off of your Evolved Abomination. And if there's anything else, like, oh, I don't know, Scorpion, slashing them up. The Thing, dishing out that negative afflicted power. And then Cyclops doing the same. Man, all of a sudden, we could get a 0-9 pretty quickly and then mix that in with Ronin. I don't know. Maybe I'm cooking a little too hard here, but I was thinking, you know, if we afflict their hand, they're not going to want to play those cards. So we can take advantage of that with a Ronin list. Keep that Ronin, gets that power. He just got buffed recently. Dude, he's so easily a 5'9", which is pretty good. 5'11", 5'13", can get up to 19, I think. It's unreal. Or maybe even more than that. Anyways, he can get to high power totals. If we discourage them from playing cards, even better. But if they do choose to play the cards that have been afflicted, well, then our Abomination gets discounted. So it's kind of like a win-win, alternative win conditions with Ronin still being a good power play. And then I have Leech in there because he's like a sleeper pick right now. He's winning so many games, especially against the Blob matchup. So yeah, I just really like this list. And then Iron Lad, we got Iron Lad there to copy basically anything. It's going to work out in our favor. We can even double down on the Luke Cage. I was thinking about mixing in Hazmat here, maybe over Iceman, maybe over Maximus. But I kind of wanted, I fell into this list and I really, really like it. And then lastly, we have Life Drain. This is my most ambitious list, but basically it was playing on the thought process of using Dracula as the target to get hit with the -3 power. And then we could do some shenanigans like Shuri into Hobgoblin to send over a 16 power Hobgoblin. Or if we hit it with Selene, then it ends up being a -22 Hobgoblin going over after the Shuri buff. Oh my goodness, that's straight up just gonna win that location. And then we got other cards that can get hit by Dracula like Red Skull, Magneto, and we can Shuri into those if we need to. Miss Marvel, just because she's the highest performing card right now, I believe, in Marvel Snap. And then a bunch of discounts and cheap things to play early to make sure that our hand is good for the Dracula discard. Now there's clear anti-synergies here that we got to watch out for. If we end up with a Goblin in our hand and Dracula's on the board, that might lose the game. So I'm experimenting here. I just want to see if something like this works, but maybe they conflict with each other a little bit too much. And it's called Life Drain because I looked up Selene, and apparently she is all about life-draining psychic powers. That's her character's lore. I don't know too much about the character, but there you go. I thought it was pretty cool. So those are my decks. I'm pretty hyped up to try them. I will have the link in the description below so you guys can try them out for yourself. But now, is Selene a snap or a pass? Boom, there you go. She is a snap. Now, I've been getting a lot of flack for passing on a lot of cards lately. Man, it's just, for me, it comes down to, I think the general population doesn't have a lot of resources, doesn't want to put a lot of money into the game, and then it's just difficult to make those decisions on those cards. For me, though, the reason I'm saying snap here is because if you use Spotlight caches, this is a fantastic week. I think a lot of people have been saving up, myself included. I don't own Black Knight. I passed on him. He seemed pretty weak at the beginning. Recently kind of got buffed with the Ebony Blade not being able to be destroyed. So I'm excited to try him out. I want to try out Selene. Iron Lad's one of the better Series 5 cards in the game, I would say. Fits in a lot of decks. This is a great week to open up Spotlight caches, so that's what I'm encouraging. When it comes to tokens, I would hesitate. I would at least look and see how she performs in the next few days. And also, you gotta love junk decks, because I think that if you don't play the junk archetype, you spend 6,000 tokens on Selene, you're going to probably regret that purchase. There's going to be more exciting cards in January and February. Man, I know I passed on a lot, but these next 2 months in 2024 are pretty hype. So I wanted to gather up as much resources as I could for this new year, because it's going to be crazy. But this seems like a great Spotlight cache opportunity, so I highly suggest going for it, especially if you don't own the other 2 cards. There you go, everybody. that's going to do it for Drewberry for this holiday season. I might do something next week before we do a snap or pass and some star ratings for the next season. But I'm going to be taking some time off to spend with the family and just relax. So thank you so much to everyone who has supported the channel, just dropping by to watch a video here or there, drop a comment, all that stuff. I appreciate it so much. It's been an incredible 2023. This content journey has far exceeded my expectations, and I'm just blown away all the time. So thank you so much. I wish you guys all the best this holiday season, and I'll catch you guys next time.